Hey folks, it's Piano Man Steve here. Today's blog, I've had a lot of people asking me to elaborate a little bit on my own personal story a little bit, so I thought I'd just share a little bit with you about, a little more with you than what I've already shared about how this all came to be. So let me walk you through my journey so far with music. I've always loved music, but I didn't necessarily know I even wanted to be a musician when I was a little kid, to be perfectly honest with you. I was always singing, and I always enjoyed music, but my mom made me take piano lessons, as a matter of fact. I didn't really particularly want to do it, and no offense to the lady that was my first teacher for the first 4 or 5 years. She did a perfectly decent job, but I wasn't into it because it was the standard model. We did a lot of, I remember my two that I remember really well were Swans on the Lake. This was in John Thompson, book 1, I believe. I just wasn't turned on by that. The other one was The Wigwam, which was in the Alfred D'Aubergé book 1 toward the end. Just wasn't all that exciting to me then, still isn't very exciting to me. But one seminal moment for me was my mother played a little bit. She took lessons as a kid, and she got to the point where she could read fairly well, as long as it didn't get to too advanced of a level. So she would occasionally play music from sheet music on the piano, and she used to play the theme from Hill Street Blues, which I really liked. It was like... the Top Gun sheet music, so she used to play which was the instrumental theme from that. I don't have the sheet music anymore, but she used to play those. So I used to enjoy listening to her play, but there was one piece of music that she played a fair amount that was from one of the John Thompson books, and I just really liked the sound of it. It was called The Spinning Song, and it was like this. Several other things, and I really liked that one. I just thought it had kind of a bouncy feel. And so one day I said, I was just bored. I was bored with what we were being taught, and we were being very sequential going through the books. And so I said, Mom, will you play that spinning song thing for me? I just want to watch. And so I had her play through that several times. And I, at this point, could read music well enough that by watching the sheet music and watching what she was doing, I could see how the two correlated. I really wasn't at that level yet, but I could see how they correlated. And I guess, I was already trying to develop my ear, but when I saw what her hands were doing, and I'd ask her to slow things down a little bit. So in a way, in person, she was doing for me what I do for you guys with song tutorials. I was asking her to play it slow, and I was watching. And so I remember one week I really just took that on, and it was really kind of fun. And by the end of the week, I was playing the spinning song. really proud of it. And I was still in the early part of John Thompson book 1. And this would have been either late book 2 or early book 3, this song. So I'm all stoked, and I go to piano lessons. And for my teacher, I go, look what I can do. Look what I learned how to do while I was away. I played the whole thing for her, and with God as my witness, she says, that was not your assignment, Stephen. You're not supposed to jump ahead like that. You're not ready for that song yet. And I remember saying to her, I'm like, I don't know, maybe 8 years old, 8 or 9 at the very oldest. And I remember saying, how can I not be ready for it? I just played it. Anyway, long story short, that was the beginning of the end of piano lessons for me in that format. It was driving me crazy because, you know, it was so inside the box. So after about 5 years of lessons, it correlated with my family moving to another town. And I really didn't have a teacher for a while, and I didn't even want one. I didn't really enjoy the lessons that I'd taken, and I hadn't learned anything I was all that excited to do. And so I kind of put it away for a while. So then we moved to Kearney, Nebraska from Ogallala, Nebraska. Ogallala is about 5,000 people, and which makes it sound bigger than it actually is, but it's kind of like a little county seat, and it's a little hub for a bunch of other little towns with 1,000 people or less that come hang out there. I moved down the road, down the interstate to Kearney, and I'm 12 years old, and it's June, so we moved like June 3rd, and I didn't know anybody in Kearney yet. I wasn't going to be in school until late August, and I really just didn't have a good way to make friends. I didn't play Little League, and I just didn't have a good way to go make friends, and there weren't a bunch of kids in the neighborhood we moved into, and so I spent a lot of time watching TV and playing video games, and I was kind of depressed anyway, as you often are when you make a move, when you're moved as a child because you're away from your friends and what you're familiar with. And so as I'm flipping around, there's this station called VH1 that is coming in as part of the basic cable package in Kearney. We never had VH1 in Ogallala. So this is kind of special. It's like, oh my gosh, it's MTV, but a little bit different. So I'm watching VH1, and besides music videos, I have all this other cool stuff going on. And one day on a Saturday, probably about, 6 weeks after we moved, they happened to play what they called the Billy Joel Superstar Saturday. And that meant that for 8 solid hours, they did nothing but play Billy Joel videos, Billy Joel concert clips, Billy Joel interviews, whatever, just all things Billy Joel. And I had heard a bunch of those songs, but I never really put together that it was all one person. And the Stormfront album was freshly out at the end of '89. This is in the summer of 1990, so he was in a full-blown tour still for Stormfront. And so they were promoting that. That's why he was being honored with this Superstar Saturday thing. I just fell in love. I fell in love with the music, and I finally had something that I was so determined to learn that it was worth it to get back to the piano. Now what's interesting is I didn't immediately go back to lessons. I took the reins over myself and started trying to learn things as much as I possibly could. Started that summer, went into the school year, but it became an obsession for me just to listen and try to copy and listen and try to copy and listen and try to copy. And eventually my mom saw that I was pretty serious about this, so she started shopping around for a piano teacher and found a guy, and what he taught me to do was read chord symbols. And I didn't get a ton of other useful stuff out of my time with him, but he taught me how to read chord symbols. And I stopped trying to read notes on the page and I started following the chords, because then at least I could buy sheet music for songs that I liked and I had the chords above. And I started, that's where my rhythm section series, my Become Your Own Rhythm Section series was born. Because as I was watching these chord symbols, I had to come up with ways to play the chords that were above that could replicate the feel and the sound and the style of these songs I was trying to create. Because I didn't just want to do this. You know, I wanted to be able to do. You know, I wanted to play music, and I was tired of, I didn't want to learn how to do chord symbols and then have everything I played sound like that lame stuff I was playing out of the piano books. So that was really when Become Your Own Rhythm Section was born. This is like 25 years ago, but I started kind of creating these rhythm patterns, and it took a long time to develop them all the way out, but certainly that was the beginning of that journey. So I learned chords from that teacher, then I started making up rhythm patterns, and that's about all I could do for the longest time, is I'd play a song and I could play the rhythm pattern only, but I didn't have any chops to do like a fill or a solo or anything. So then I was fortunate enough 2 years later to become the pianist in my high school's jazz band. And Kearney is a place with about 30,000 people, but the high school there was only one high school, so it was a big enough high school. It was Class A, which meant it was one of the bigger schools in the state of Nebraska. So we had better funding and more activities than a lot of the smaller schools did. And so jazz band was actually a class during the day, a period of the day that I got to go to every single day. I got academic credit for it and a grade and everything. And even though it wasn't the music I was most in love with, I got to, for 45 minutes a day, 5 days a week, go and play in an ensemble. And I got to comp and follow chords and learn all different kinds of rhythms and styles, because we played everything from swing music to funk to cool jazz and bebop to kind of like a rock fusion. They tried to give us a pretty wide variety of things to do. I got to play with some really unusual meters like 7/4, that kind of stuff, but mostly I just got the chance to play some kind of music every day on the piano with a bass player and a drummer and a horn section, and I had to follow chords and figure out how to do it. And so it was in that class that I learned about the blues scale. So I finally had something that I could use to start working on doing some fills and solos. My ear at this point has also started to develop a little bit, and I'm noticing things like, I just taught recently how you can make fills off of the chord that you're playing. Well, I was noticing that Elton John was doing that a lot, so I was getting better at filling space from the chord that I was in, since I didn't really have anything else to go with. So I'd be playing along. That kind of thing, you know, just on the chord that I'm already playing, fluttering around and doing something with it. Then I learned the blues scale, and so I could start adding in things from the blues scale. Okay, now, So I do that for 4 years, and I really gained a lot of steam because of that experience. Got to play, I played at the Greeley Jazz Festival in Colorado, you know, met all the guys in the band Tower of Power, and met, I always say his name wrong, but the trumpet player, Arturo Sandoval, I believe is his name, just spectacular trumpet player. So really got some cool experience playing in that jazz band, and we were actually pretty good. There were some other really good musicians in there, so that helped raise the bar. So then I go to college at the University of Nebraska at Kearney, and I majored in music business for about 2.5 years, and then suddenly realized that being a musician and majoring in music are not really all that relative to each other, but they can be. I shouldn't say that. Being a music major isn't bad. I didn't need a music major for what I was trying to do. In fact, there wasn't a whole lot of respect for what I was trying to do, so I just finally moved on. But what I can tell you is that I got to play for another couple of years in the jazz rock ensemble there. I could have done that for 4 years. I just kind of moved on from the music department. But I had a wonderful experience there, and that instructor taught me the swing scale, which I thought, oh my gosh, I wish more people knew about it, because between the two of them, the blues scale's cool, the swing scale's too cool, but when you know them both, holy cow, can you do a lot of cool stuff. So that really pulled me into a new plane too, and we did some other cool things, played in some neat festivals and stuff, and that gave me a great solid foundation. At this point I start getting booked a lot for, well, starts in high school. I start getting booked a lot to just go and play piano at cocktail hours and dinner hours at conventions, because Kearney was a place that had a lot of conventions at their hotels. My dad kind of helped me get a keyboard, and he paid for half of it and got the store to, it was funny, it was a Alesis Quadrasynth 76 key, non-weighted key, which I still have, and I actually mostly use that when I'm gigging. It's just my little baby, I can't let go of her. It's got a great collection of sounds on it and all of that, and I've gotten so used to playing it that it doesn't bother me that it's a non-weighted key, and it sure is light and easy to travel with. But anyway, Dad paid half. It was $1,600 in 1994. So my dad said, I'll tell you what, I'll pay for half of this, you have to pay for the rest. But what he did was, he had a store downtown. My dad was in the clothing business, had a store for 25 years. He went down, made an $800 down payment on the keyboard, and convinced the guy that owned the music store, his name was Clark Yonda's Music, and he convinced Clark to give me that keyboard and let me make a $100 a month payment on it for 8 months. And then I had to do odd jobs for my dad during that period to make the money that I need to pay for that, and then of course if I got any gigs. So at this time I'm starting to get some bookings, because one person gave me a shot to do something like that, this little cocktail hour, and then I had some business cards made and I passed them out at the hotels that were hosting these conventions. The next thing you know, I start getting a lot of calls, and I'm lugging this 76 key keyboard and a big old Fender amplifier, like a bass amp that had 2 or 3 channels on it. That's because that's all you had at that time. There wasn't a small sound system to carry, so I'm lugging this really heavy, awful amplifier with me in this keyboard, and I had one patch cord. One patch cord and a pedal, and I'm plugging it in, and I would sit during this thing, and I would never have been all that great at playing the melody to stuff. While I'm better at it now than I used to be, but that's never been my forte. I'm kind of a accompany myself singing kind of player, so at that time I had no game for it. So I'm just playing like soft rock stuff all night long, and so instead of being like playing the melody like, be playing that kind of thing, except I couldn't play the melody. So I'm just sitting in the background, literally just chording. So here I am using my very limited knowledge of licks and fills and all of these rhythm patterns that are coming to me, along with chord symbols, which I'd learned. And I'm just over there. People are sipping their cocktails, meeting and greeting, getting ready for the speakers for the night, or they're sitting down to dinner, and I'm just over there at my little piano going. Because that's about all the game that I had at the time. Well, I just kept getting them, and pretty soon I started making $50 every time I do it, and then made its way to 75, and then 100, and then 125, and then pretty soon I'm getting a couple $100 every time I do this, and I'm like, hey, I like this. This is cool. But I had had this burning desire to sing and play. Well, when I was a senior in high school, my dad, the amazing supporter of what I do that he's always been, he said, we need to give you a senior recital. I said, well, what do you mean? He said, you need a chance to do what you love to do for some people. And so he booked the Kearney Community Theater on March 17th, 1996. It was St. Patrick's Day, which was interesting. It was the day after my senior prom. So that I didn't get as much sleep the night before as I should have, but he booked the community theater, and they invited about 300 people from Ogallala and Kearney to come to this thing, and they loaded it up. Luckily, my parents were pretty well known in Kearney, being local business people, so they had a lot of friends, and they loaded this place up. And what I was able to do was, I knew some people. We went to a church in town, a Catholic church, and I got on with, it was actually a college campus town, and so we went to the campus church, and so they kind of had kind of cooler music going on in a way, kind of rockin' music. And Dad, again, had stepped in on my behalf and got the guy that was sort of the leader of the band to let me play piano in that group. And so again, that was another opportunity where I had on a regular basis to play with a drummer and a bass player and some acoustic guitars and stuff, and we did some pretty cool stuff. Actually, it was really a lot of fun. And so I asked the drummer and because it was all volunteers, and I asked the drummer and the band leader, who was acoustic guitar player and a good singer, and another guy that I knew who had a bass, if they would join me at this senior recital. So I put together my very first concert, and at the age of 18, I did a 2-hour show. It was my senior recital, and that was my first time getting to play rock and roll music and play and sing at the same time with a band and have my own showcase. And man, I was hooked. We had so much fun, and you know, in retrospect, it was not that good of a show, but you know, people didn't have very high expectations, so we exceeded them. And what I know now is far more than what I could do then, but it was a lot of fun, and it was a great experience. So I was like hungry for that. So then in college, I started widening my net a little bit, and I started working with some other bands and all of that. And then after I graduated from college, I bought this. Again, over time, because I did not have the money. This was about a $2,000 instrument, my Roland Phantom sequencer, which is what allows me to make bass, drum, you know, just allows me to make tracks, build songs. I bought this and I started making backing tracks immediately, and I used to take this out with me, and I would, this is so old, it's on 3.5-inch discs. And all the data is on there, so I would play along with the data on the disc right from this keyboard. And I started really enjoying that. And again, you know, my early tracks weren't all that good. Today I'm pretty good at it, but after you do it for 10 years, you start to figure out what the pitfalls are, and you know, you do the tracks more efficiently, and you know, you don't try to do things that you're not going to be able to do effectively. But point is, I kind of turned myself into a solo act at that moment. I like working with other people, but I'm such a kind of an entrepreneur in a way that I don't like having to work the system of, you know, trying to schedule rehearsals with 5 other people and trying to split the money up and what do we charge and how many gigs a year can we play, and then you have all these other people to let down if you can't do it. I really like being a solo act so that I can just take in my needs into account and nobody else is really being hurt. If I can't take a gig, I don't take a gig. If I want to take a gig, I can offer fairly competitive price because I'm delivering what a full band would, but I'm one person, so I can make a good living at it, etc., etc. So I started doing that hardcore in 2002, got a gig at a local pub there in Kearney, and started playing about every weekend, and that pretty much ballooned into doing private parties up the Ying, and from there I've hardly looked back. I don't do much background music anymore. From that point forward, my gigs were all about playing the music I love and singing while I do it. And again, you know, after you do it long enough, you get better, you start learning more things. And so that brings us to the present day. I moved out to Southern Nevada in the summer of '05. So I got about 3 years of pretty hardcore gigging in Kearney. I moved here. I actually moved here and went into real estate, which was a real mistake. In fact, that's what I call it. I don't call it the real estate industry. I call it the real mistake industry, just because of my experience trying to work in it. But I did not care for that, but I stuck it out for a few years, and my first wife did not like it here, but I kind of found myself here, and it was not an easy decision, but we split up, and I continued to try to make a living as a realtor, and I wasn't really doing any gigs, but I was playing all the time at home for a few years. And in 2011, so after about 5 years of really kind of what I'd call living a lie, I came out of the musician's closet, if you will. I just said, you know what, this is what I do. I had always done it on the side of other things, but I said, this is really what I love to do. This is what I'm good at. This is what everybody thinks I am, even if they experience me in some other fashion. I mean, if they saw me at any of the other jobs I worked, that was nice, but they always thought of me as a musician first. And it's what I really enjoyed doing, and I've always enjoyed teaching and passing on information. I think one of my skills that I'm proud of is my ability to see something complicated and see the little chunks that make it up and communicate clearly those little chunks. So, basically at the end of 2010 is when I decided I wanted to do this. My license for real estate was up for renewal, and I decided I was not going to do it. It was going to cost me $1,000 to do it. I didn't like the work. I wasn't making very good money. I had gone through bankruptcy, or I was on the verge of going through bankruptcy because I had lived on credit cards trying to make that work, and it was bad news. And so in November, I scheduled, I didn't know what in the world to do or how I was going to make it work, but I burned my bridges and I said, I'm not going to, whatever I do after my real estate license expires, I'm going to be a musician. I'm going to find a way to pay my bills doing that. I can't be any more broke than I've been the last few years, so I won't get any worse off, but I'm going to do what I love. And so what I did, because I couldn't think of anything else to do, is I called the local Mesquite Community Theater and I scheduled a date for myself. And I invited everyone I've met in Mesquite, or I had met in Mesquite at the time, to come, and what I was going to do is a tribute to Elton John. I didn't want to do a tribute to Billy Joel yet, because I thought, my gosh, you know, what if I really suck this first time? I can't bear to have a bad experience with the guy who brought me to the dance. You know what I mean? Whenever I do that, I've got to know it'll be good. So I found myself an Elton John costume. I found a sport coat in a thrift store for $5 that was bright orange. And I had my mom hot glue a bunch of rhinestones and stuff on it. And I found some crazy glasses, and she put some more small rhinestones on that. I found a clip-on earring, and you know, this big gaudy cross thing that I put on over my neck, and it just really had a lot of bling on it. And I just wore it with black pants and a black shirt. And I set up my other keyboard, which you don't see very often. There's a couple performance videos on it, but it's an 88 key weighted Baldwin Pianoville that I keep in my living room. And I took that over and we set it up, and I sold about 90 tickets to this thing, which by the time I got done paying for the theater, the insurance they require you to get, entertainment insurance, and the couple other fees that were included in the whole thing, I only made like $200 the whole night, for the whole night after selling 90 tickets. But I really worked hard for about 6 weeks leading up to it, put together a whole show of tracks, got a great set of Elton John tracks, practiced my butt off, really got this stuff down, and I had just so much fun. We had a great time that night. I did 2 shows. And it made a big enough splash that I got an article run on me in the local newspaper. And because of that, I got called. This is, okay, keep in mind, this is like November 20th or something like that of 2010. So then there was Thanksgiving, and then I got called at the last minute by the folks that have the local hospital, and they asked me to come out and do some entertainment at their upcoming Christmas party. They already had a DJ booked, but they wanted somebody to come do like a 45-minute program, you know, like entertainment. I said, great, and I got a good fee for it, which I needed. I was just like completely destitute, broke at the time. So I take this gig, and this is on about December 7th of 2010. And the DJ was a guy named Scott Grove, who is a guitar player and a guitar teacher, but DJs on the side for fun. And we were trying to work out how to set up the sound system, because it didn't make sense to bring his sound system and my sound system, so I was just going to plug into his gear. So I met with him in the afternoon just to kind of sort all that out and get set up, and then I was going to come back in the evening to play the show. Well, he and I hit it off immediately. He is a crazy, absolutely crazy guy. He's got videos all over YouTube. You should check him out. Groovy DJs. But Scott Grove, foul mouth, but just the biggest heart ever, and a super nice guy. And anyway, we got to talking, and he was impressed by the way I played and sang, and he said, you know, I have an internet business. Now keep in mind, I had a dream for years that what I wanted to do was really create an online business for myself so I could work out of the home. I wanted to leverage something that I knew how to do, and I wanted to work out of the home and be able to help people, but, you know, kind of have freedom of my own schedule. So I'd always wanted to do that. For like 5 years, that had been a dream of mine, and I was hoping that I'd make enough money off the Elton John show that I could live on it for a few months and really try to figure out how to launch an internet-based business. Well, I didn't make the money I needed to, but I meet Scott and he goes, yeah, I've got an online business where I teach guitar lesson videos. I go, really? He says, yeah, I'm doing crazy business. You can't even believe how many people. I got people all over the world that are students now. And he goes, you should do that. You're a good enough player and you've got a good personality. You ought to do that. And I was like, I would love to. And he said, well, let's have lunch this week and I'll take you back to my house. I'll show you my whole operation. I'm like, thank you. So I went to lunch with him a couple days later, went back to his house, and he showed me how he had everything set up. Absolutely everything. Gave me a template for the business. Now, he was doing a lot of business with DVDs and stuff at the time, and my business has evolved since then, but my initial launch into the business was completely because of his generosity of showing me how to do it, to give me some template of how to get started. So I started filming. My first video was Money Licks Volume 1, and then Become Your Own Rhythm Section Volume 1. And the feedback I was getting from students kind of helped me understand what to film next, where there was a need. And eventually you look up, I looked up and I went, oh my gosh, I've got these different categories that things are falling into. I've got rhythm patterns, I've got chords, and I've got licks and improv. And then I've got this other stuff that's like, what format do you want to take all this information and plug it into? Well, that's what I call the performance specialties. So the modules that you see in my members section now were sort of born from, over time, making videos based on people's requests. And anyway, that was in 2011 when I got launched. And Scott and I have been good friends ever since, and we get together pretty frequently and visit about business and just kind of keep up on it. He does more business than I do, but part of that's because I was a little bit erratic there for a while about how engaged. I would work for a while and then take a couple of months off, and then work for a while and take a couple of months off, and I was just making the bare minimum money I needed to pay for everything. But I felt like I needed to go on a bit of a walkabout, if you will. I had to go on a spiritual journey, and it's when I learned, what things I was doing that were really making me fat and sick, and I changed my lifestyle a lot. And so that was all good, but I kind of got a fire to just really, really go. I want to help as many people as I can now. And so I'm very engaged, and I intend to be for the long haul, because I really have found something that is a calling for me and a passion. But when I got started, I really didn't know what I was doing, and I guess I wanted to share that with you, because whether you're talking about the piano or anything else, anything you do in your life that's really worthwhile, you just start, and you don't know what you're doing, but you kind of figure things out as you go. It's ready, fire, aim, and that's kind of how this whole thing has been. But I owe Scott Grove a lot for that. He helped me get launched into business, and a series of just wonderful, happy coincidences, or maybe they aren't coincidences, but very, very good fortune found me in that. The capital that I needed so that I could buy a camera and get a DVD burner, like a burning tower and all that kind of stuff. My now current wife had a bar of silver that she bought with. She went to school on scholarships and grants because her family was kind of impoverished, and she was a valedictorian, so she got both. So she always had a surplus of money at the end of every semester in college, and she bought a silver bar at one point when silver prices were pretty low, and she forgot all about it. And her parents called us up right after I met Scott and was trying to figure out what I would do to launch myself into this business, and they called her up and said, silver prices are high, do you want us to sell that bar you've got? And she's like, yeah. So we got $2,000. And that was just enough money for me to pay for everything I needed to get launched in this, because she believed in what I was doing so much that she said, use it all. And it was incredible. And so I did. I started making videos. My first one came out February 15th of 2011. And here we are 3 years later, and now I'm on a membership platform, and everything's being streamed, and that first videos turned into over 200 titles now in the membership section, along with another 36 or 37 song tutorials. And it just really has ballooned up, and I've got this amazing community of people from all over the world, of like-minded people who are trying to learn to play the piano in a way that's fun and fulfilling for them, and I get to be a part of that journey, and it's a very, very magical existence. But I could never have told you that this is where I would end up, to be perfectly honest with you. I could never have told you that, but it is, and I think this is better than being a recording artist, and I mean that, because I am the master of my own destiny in this job. I'm my own boss, but every day I get to hear from people whose lives are being impacted by what I've learned how to do, and it was all stuff that I learned how to do for no particular aim. It was stuff I learned how to do just because it seemed like it would be fun to know how to do it, and it seemed worthwhile. And it was hard for me to learn all of that, and it came from a lot of different teachers and a lot of different experiences, but it is so amazing now to be able to share it and have you guys tell me your experiences with it. And your feedback when you're telling me what you haven't learned yet from it and what you'd like to learn is exactly what tells me what to do next. So it's incredible. So I feel incredibly blessed, not just to be doing what I love and making a living wage off of it, but to have you guys in my life and to be able to share what I know and have it make an impact on people in New Zealand and South Africa and Japan and India and all over Europe and Canada and Brazil and Argentina and Chile and I think I'm in 42 states now. There are 5 or 6 states or maybe about 8 states that I don't have subscribers from yet, but I'd like to see all 50 states fill in at some point here in the United States. To be able to have friends all over the world like this and know that the journey I went on, not knowing where it would take me, could be helping you guys. That's the coolest thing that's ever happened in my life. Well, except for Mandy, of course. So, thank you. That's my story. It's long-winded, and I hope that I don't even know if it'll bring any value to your life, but it is making me feel an awful lot of gratitude that I want to express to you. So, thank you. Thank you for being a part of my community. Thank you for trusting me enough to let me be a part of your musical journey. I'm going to keep doing the very best I can to teach you everything that I know. I don't know everything, and there's some things that you'll be better off learning from somebody else because that's their forte, but I promise you I'm going to try not to take any secrets to the grave with me. So thanks for going on this ride with me. It is an absolute joy and an absolute pleasure for me every single day to get up and think about what I can do for you, because you do so much for me. All right. Thanks. Make sure you have fun with your lessons, because if you're not having fun when you're making music, you're doing it wrong. And I'll see you guys soon. Thanks so much. Later.